The term left libertarian means different things to different people. Here I will be defining a left libertarian as the promotion of three schools of thought: mutualism, libertarian collectivism, and libertarian communism. I should point out that by communism, I mean a stateless, classless, and moneyless society, and this should not be confused with the Soviet Union, Maoism, and so on. These systems use money, had different classes, and were all state. So when I say libertarian communism, think of the exact opposite of these highly oppressive systems. The Alliance of the Libertarian Left is a new organization of people calling themselves left libertarians. I'm not associated with them, and I have no problem with their platform. However, they cover a much larger area of libertarian thought than myself. I'm just mentioning this since so many people have been asking me about them. I'm not going to accuse any left libertarian of not being a left libertarian. I find this type of immaturity dissolves into pointless debates. I want to make a couple definitions clear so I can reference this video in the future and present a clear understanding of what I'll be discussing. Definitions are important because in order to be clear and logical, we need to define what we are talking about. I should also point out that I'll be using the language of political philosophy rather than political science. The language of political science is extremely sloppy. So a socialist can be somebody like Obama, Stalin, or even Ronald Reagan. Political philosophy is more specific. So under the heading of socialism, you have libertarian socialism, democratic socialism, free market socialism, Stalinism, Maoism, and so on. If you spend some time diving into the world of socialism, you will find that these groups are violently opposed to each other because they are extremely different. By a libertarian, I mean anyone who promotes liberty or freedom. Since this word is vague, it is usually hyphenated with another word. I should also mention that the word libertarian was actually first used by the left. As I said before, socialism is a vague word. For this reason, I will be making a distinction between a libertarian socialist and a state socialist. These two groups are defined by who owns the means of production. By means of production, I am talking about inputs used in production, including factories, machines, and tools. Simplistically speaking, this comes down to who owns the workplace. Under state socialism, the state owns the means of production. Today, the government runs things like dams, or the post office, and so on. Under libertarian socialism, the workers themselves own the means of production. A left libertarian, the way I define it, is a libertarian socialist. Throughout my videos, I'll use another word for left libertarian, and that is anarchism. The word anarchism literally means without ruler, authority, or master. So I will use the words left libertarian, libertarian socialist, and anarchist as being synonymous. I don't mean to discount others who use these words, such as the followers of early American anarchism. Again, this is just how I'll be defining it. Anarcho-syndicalism is a means to achieving an anarchist society. This isn't the only means, just one of many. In a nutshell, anarcho-syndicalism promotes the use of unionizing across trade and geographical area. These unions then freely associate with each other into a federation of unions. Once these unions are in place with high numbers, they go on strike and effectively run the company out of business. At this point, the workers start running the company themselves. So what do left libertarians share in common? While I find proponents of each school insisting that they are very different from each other, I find that there is much more in common than most people realize. All three schools want to eliminate capitalism and replace it with firms that are owned and operated by the workers themselves. These cooperatives are highly networked in free association by regional and trade association. All three promote both individual and collective liberty. They are all against the idea of the state and consider it a hindrance on personal and economic freedom. Top-down decision-making is eliminated by horizontal participatory decision-making. All three promote mutual aid, solidarity, and equality between people while also pushing to eliminate profit, rent, and interest. Left libertarians also encourage more power to be placed in the hands of the community. And last, they push for a highly decentralized economic system that prevents state socialism and corporatism. I find the difference between these schools of thought to be different mostly in their analysis and emphasis on particular principles. For instance, mutualists analyze the state to be the major perpetrator of crisis, whereas libertarian collectivists see it more as a product of capitalism itself. However, both see crisis as stemming from both the private sector and the state, while agreeing that in some cases the two cannot be disentangled or even solidly understood. The word exploitation tends to make people think of the labor theory of value. I don't rely on or even use the labor theory of value in any of my videos, and I don't plan to in the future. I should also say that I won't be using the slave labor argument, since libertarian socialism doesn't rely on it. I'm going to use Brainpolice's definition of exploitation since it resembles my own. Exploitation is taking advantage of one's position of power in order to get people to do whatever you want them to do, to put someone in a negative situation through the use of a power disparity. This can be manifested in anything ranging from familial relations to the workplace. Last, I want to say that when I talk about markets and capitalism, I'm speaking of the currently existing markets and capitalism. There are some that promote systems where capitalism would take a completely different form. That may be true. However, my concern will be in the form that it exists today. I can't possibly take into account every political system that has ever existed and still speak effectively, so my apologies if I'm not being politically correct.